Thank you for visiting our channel. Please subscribe by clicking on the subscribe button. You can also click on the bell, which will notify you by email when a new video is posted. That way you're able to stay in touch with us and get the latest updates.
Good evening and welcome to our second case. Which is our evening educational program that we have every other month here at FM Area Foundation. My name is Shell Lemire and I am the president of the Red River Valley Asperger Autism Network. And it is my pleasure to spend this time with you. A couple of things before I hand it off. This presentation is going to be about summer activities, what you can do to structure your kids' summer, different activities that they can do to make the summer enjoyable for them and for you. Because instead of the 2 weeks to fill like we do on break, we have 10 weeks to fill, and we want everybody to like each other by the end of August. I'm going to touch more on different activities that we can do, but I'm going to start off first with our first activity that you can absolutely do with your child on the spectrum. I'm going to hand that off to Erin Borden, who is another one of our board members, to introduce our next guest.
Thanks so much, Shell. Summer's coming so quickly, it's difficult to keep track sometimes of all of the activities we have available here in Fargo. And to that end, as a parent, I've come to understand the components of leadership that must be present in a coach in order for children to not only enjoy a summer activity or sport, but to also inspire their athletes or kiddos to continue in that activity, even when at times very hard work is necessary for success. The first, as you may already know, is just genuine passion for the sport or activity. Children know when they are being led by someone who is no longer fulfilled by engaging in any form the activity that they teach. And the second is patience. Not just patience that seems to be inherent to some very lucky personality types, but the kind of patience that comes from knowledge and experience. I can always tell when a coach has a true depth of knowledge by the way they lead their athletes with extreme calm and attention to detail. They are able to maintain this demeanor because they are so familiar with the road that must be traveled in order to grow in their sport or activity. In short, they have perspective. They know it's all going to be worth it in the end. And I am so pleased to introduce our presenter this evening, someone that I've been lucky enough to know for, I think, almost 4 years now. Jason Schoeneck, a true leader in the Fargo-Moorhead community, not just the fencing community. He started out as my daughter's first coach, and he is the absolute personification of both of these attributes. So welcome very much, Jason. We're so glad to have you here tonight.
Okay. So, I'm Jason Schoeneck. I grew up in Moorhead. I've lived and worked in Fargo-Moorhead my entire life. But I had to accept this invitation to talk here today because this is an amazing organization that does amazing work. And I truly believe that anyone can benefit from participating in the sport of fencing no matter where they're at. So first I'll tell you about how I got started in fencing. Then I'll talk about, introduce you to what fencing is. I'll tell you how the Fargo Park District fencing program works, how you can sign up, how you can contact me if you would like to share any details about yourself or your athlete before or during the class, where we fence, a little bit about the building, about the room that we fence in, what the first day is like, how the fencing classes normally go, and if there's time, we'll do a quick demo and questions at the end too. So how did I get started in fencing? When I was young, And growing up, I wasn't that interested in most of the mainstream sports that were out there, like football, baseball, basketball. Nothing against those or any other sports, but thinking back, I think that there were a lot of kids who felt the same way that I did. Many of us missed opportunities, wasted valuable time, or got into trouble when we didn't have an outlet that was available and engaging. I made it through school anyway, and years later I became interested in fencing. I was watching the Olympics one year, I saw fencing, learned everything that I could about it, and I've been hooked ever since. Fast forwarding, I became very active in the world of fencing, and have been a volunteer fencing coach and organizer for the Fargo Park District for many years. Through fencing, athletes develop balance, endurance, coordination, strategic thinking, and confidence. And you learn about sportsmanship and teamwork, and about the struggles and rewards in reaching personal goals. I've been a volunteer coach and organizer for the Fargo Park District for many years, and it's grown into a first-rate opportunity for people of all ages and abilities to try something new, meet new friends, and be active. This year we even started to take the first steps toward starting a wheelchair fencing program, which I can talk more about later. I've made untold number of new friends and had many amazing experiences through my involvement in fencing in 3 years. So where did fencing come from? Fencing is very old and fascinating and has a colorful history. Starting big picture, fencing in a primitive form has been around since at least Egyptian times. Back then, fencing was basically training to fight with real weapons for real wars. Then fencing was studied and taught more scientifically in the 1600s in Europe. And then fencing changed entirely in the 1800s when dueling was outlawed in most European countries, and fencing turned into a sport. The sport of fencing has been a part of every modern Olympics since 1896. Fencing and the way it's taught and practiced changed again in the mid-1900s when fencing became electronically scored, and sports science took off as an industry. Today we have lots of different kinds of fencing. We have stage fencing, historical fencing, classical fencing, and sport fencing, and many others. Fargo Park District fencing classes, we focus on modern sport fencing, or we call it just modern fencing or Olympic fencing. In modern sport fencing, we have 3 different weapons: foil, saber, and epee. There are a lot of similarities between the 3 weapons, but in some ways they're completely different. There are different weapons, different target areas, different rules, different techniques, different histories, almost like 3 different sports. In the Fargo Park District fencing classes, we focus on Olympic sport fencing and we focus on foil fencing. In terms of how the Fargo Park District fencing program is set up, we have 2 different levels. We have beginner classes and advanced classes. Both are 8 weeks long, and both meet on Tuesdays and Thursday evenings, and they run year-round. Beginner classes meet on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Advanced fencing also meets on Tuesdays and Thursdays, but meets right after the beginner classes from 7:30 to 9 p.m. The beginner class, we start with the very absolute basics. Practice those basics with each other for a while. And then after a few classes, when we're all up to speed, we do controlled fencing against each other, called bouting or free fencing. After 8 weeks of beginner fencing, you can sign up for the advanced fencing class. In advanced fencing, we switch to electric fencing, refine our technique, talk about competitions, and talk more about refereeing fencing also. For both the beginner class and the advanced class, the ages are 12 and up, and all equipment is provided by the Fargo Park District. So the first day of fencing, what is that like? So first there's an introduction, who's who. We talked about the plan for the session. Then we do a group warm-up. We talk about the parts of the foil, talk about how to hold the foil, and we start by doing basic fencing footwork. We talk about the safety top 3. So staying hydrated, knowing your own limits, and warming up. Also using correct form. We talk about the protective clothing and gear that's used in fencing. And then from then on, our fencing classes usually go something like this. We'll line up and do a group warm-up. We'll suit up in our fencing gear and line up again. We'll cover some new material, practice the new material, and then we'll usually wrap up the class with free fencing or just fencing against each other. During the class, we work our way through this rough 8-week agenda covering all the basics. At first, we spend most of our time learning and practicing new things. Later on in the class, we learn fewer new things and do more fencing using the stuff that we've learned. We talk about the 3 primary fencing fundamentals: distance, timing, and initiative. And we talk about fencing competitions. We talk about the 3 different stages of learning fencing. We talk about different types of fencing lessons, so group lessons and individual lessons. And we talk about how refereeing is conducted also. Toward the end of the beginner class, we talk about the advanced class and what the differences are between the two. And we talk about electronically scored fencing, how that works, and more again on refereeing. So maybe it would be useful to do a quick demo of just kind of what some of the equipment looks like, maybe like what a quick lesson looks like. So I'd like to invite Selah to join me, and we'll go through a quick demonstration.
May I ask a quick question, Jason? What if someone does not want to participate in competitions? Can they still participate in the fencing classes?
Absolutely. There are
Excellent.
people who participated for years, and they're just not interested in competitions. They prefer sort of the seeing themselves improve slowly over time, get better and better. So yeah, that's a totally optional part of fencing.
Awesome, thank you.
Any other questions? Answer right away.
Oh, not so much a question, but a comment. I do think though that if an athlete wanted to experience a tournament, the Fargo Parks tournaments are the perfect place to start in terms of competitions, or even just let that be the only kind that you do. I don't know if it could be said that would be the gentlest way in, but it's a perfect place where athletes are supported in an educational environment. So I would highly recommend it.
Yeah, the Fargo Park District tournaments that we run every other month are totally beginner tournaments that are meant more as an introduction to electric fencing competitions, more so than something that's really serious.
What exactly is electric fencing? Because here's me thinking like shock wires. So.
Yeah, sure.
So there is non-electric fencing and electric fencing. The only difference, or I should say the main difference between the two is with electric fencing, you use an electronic scoring system to help determine whether or not touches were scored or not.
So basically it's a touch sensitive, where if you say whatever padding gets hit, it would mark it as a.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we can demonstrate that a little bit too with some of the electric equipment that we have.
Okay.
In foil fencing,
Mm-hmm.
the valid target is the torso only.
Oh, okay.
So if Selah and I are fencing and she attacks and hits me here in the arm,
Mm-hmm.
the referee will call halt, and the scoring system will show that it was an off-target touch. If it lands someone on the torso, the system will show that it was a non-target. So you score a point that way. With non-electric, these borderline touches are really hard to determine. So competitions are always done with electric scoring. It's just to help with that part.
Okay. Cool.
Awesome.
So for a demonstration, Selah's going to suit up, and maybe I'll just comment on some of the protective gear and equipment that she has. And then I will put on some coach protective equipment, and we'll do a quick demonstration of what a fencing lesson looks like.
While you're getting your equipment ready, Selah, can I say, first of all, keep going, sweetie. I appreciate that there's not a financial barrier because people don't have to buy the equipment. I also appreciate that when you put the, is it called a shield, is that what the head
A
thing is?
mask.
A mask, that for people who don't, like a lot of the sensory noise around them,
Mhm.
it's very protective.
Yeah. Yep.
So I appreciate that, for people on the spectrum.
Mhm.
Also the fact that it's only you don't have to worry if the rest of your teammates are
Yeah.
making mistakes.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of little benefits like that too. So maybe while she's doing that, I'll just show a few things. So here is what a fencing mask looks like.
There's,
So it has, protected, these are steel wires that are run horizontally and vertically, and they're all welded together. And then there's also a coating that goes over them. You can see Salah's fenced in lots of tournaments, so it's getting all scratched up and it's been used quite a bit. There's also this very thick lower part is called the bib, and that covers and protects your neck. So that even if you were poked here really hard, it wouldn't hurt. At every competition that you go to, it's required that your mask be inspected to make sure that it's up to snuff, safety-wise. And then when they determine that it is, they put a stamp on there, kind of like a stamp of approval. And then when you fence during a competition, the referee will look to make sure that you have a current stamp on there that shows that your mask is up to date. You can see one of these stamps for every tournament. And then there's an elastic strap on the back here, so when you put it on, it stays snug to your head, so even if you get moving about pretty wildly, your mask isn't gonna fly off when you're fencing.
And the outfit is tight, isn't it?
yeah,
That would be great too.
Especially for those compression
Yeah.
people.
For people who need compression, that would be fantastic.
Other pieces of protective equipment on your weapon in hand, you wear a glove, specially designed fencing gloves that are made for this. Salah has fencing pants, which are made out of puncture-resistant ballistic nylon that are made for fencing, and a jacket also. Women wear a rigid chest protector, and also there's an underarm protector. So
didn't even need that.
I saw you put it on, but it's like a half jacket that just gives you one extra layer of protection if the impossible were to happen. The injury that you see with fencing mostly is ankle rolls, like with a lot of other sports. So fencing coach equipment is usually black because it's used so much that it gets so dirty that if it were white, it would just look terrible forever.
Here, let me, got it.
This last part is only required for electric fencing. And so this is the vest that has metallic fibers woven through it so that it can be connected electronically to the scoring system with cables and wires and things.
And if I was wearing a body cord, it would attach first to my jacket, then to my weapon, and then to an electronic rail that's at the back of the strip.
So maybe just a quick word on a foil. This is a basic non-electric foil that you would use in a beginner class. So very simple. The blade bell guard is what protects your hand while you're fencing. There's also this bell pad underneath. It's like a cushion for your hand, and then a rubber tip on the end. Underneath it, the end of the blade is blunted like this. So even if these metal rubber tips come flying off, you can stick them back on, and they're still not dangerous. But these are what you learn about fencing with. So non-electric foil. So usually lessons start with a salute. And then we haven't practiced or anything, so we're just gonna kind of wing this. So I'll just kind of give you just a couple simple things to do. So normally a fencer is totally fully perfect on guard like Sayla's is. Coaches stand more upright because they're teaching all day and they would get tired if they were like this all the time. Whereas as an athlete, you're kind of expected to practice your perfect form. So when I come off your blade, Sayla's just going to extend and touch. And I'll give a little parry. You should go back on guard. And now maybe we'll make it a little bit more like fencing by adding some footwork, so she'll keep the same distance. So this is a typical kind of a warm-up. Good. We go through a kind of a warm-up, couple-minute warm-up to make sure that ready to go for a full lesson. And then we move into kind of the middle part. Lessons usually have like a beginning, a middle, and an end. And the beginning and the end are kind of usually the same, the warm-up and a cool-down. It's the middle part that you kind of customize to in a lot of different ways. What they work on, if there's a competition coming up, if there's a certain action they're trying to get stronger at, if there's another fencer they're trying to beat and they need some practice in, or if it's a left-handed fencer that they're trying to work against, coaches will teach left-handed also. So now moving into the middle part of a lesson, I'm just going to do some attacks. Sayla's going to do a parry or post. You can see this is where she's doing it perfectly, but if there were things that I would want to correct, this is where we would stop and make little adjustments. Now again, we'll add in footwork where she keeps a distance, make it a little bit more like real fencing. I try to make it a little bit trickier. And then moving into like a cool down, we would maybe go through a bunch of different actions where we would practice counterattacks and we would practice all different kinds of parry or posts. I would attack in different lines of the target. I would do different types of attacks, beat attacks, attacks with disengages and cutovers, really round out the defense of the fencer. Now we'll do just a regular cool down where I'm going to search for Sayla's blade. She'll disengage, lunge, and hold it on. And this is where we can look at the form and make sure it's perfect. It's perfect. And we'll just do a couple more. This is just long lunges at the end of the lesson to just wind down. And then after about 20 minutes, 30 minutes, or however long, salute again, shake hands. Thank you.
Do you want me to stay seated up?
Maybe just for a second, in case there's questions.
I was wondering if you could please show the difference between an electronic weapon.
Yep, definitely. So there's also different kinds of grips. Like this is the one we looked at first. I don't know how many different kinds of grips there are, at least 20 that I know of that I've seen. Generically, this is called a French grip, or some people call it a tennis grip even. And generically, this is called a pistol grip. This is a Visconti pistol grip. But there's also Russian and Belgian and Zivkovic and all kinds of different styles of grips. And over the years, you just feel how the different types of grips feel, and the different sizes. This is a small, but there's medium and large, and there's extra small also. If you notice on the inside, the bell guard, here we have a connector on this one. And so that's for the wire that runs through the fencer's jacket and hangs out the back and connects to the scoring system. Whereas the non-electric wouldn't have a socket like that. But you can also have electric weapons with this grip. Some people prefer that combination. So you would see a socket here, even though it doesn't have a pistol grip. Another major difference, instead of a rubber tip, like a non-electric foil has, an electric foil has a button on the end. And so this is part of the scoring system where when a touch happens, and it's off target like this, it pushes this, you can hear it's like, it moves like about just a couple of millimeters. If it doesn't move at all, it's not going to register a touch. So even if you're attacking someone's jacket moves a little bit, if it doesn't push that button in, it wasn't a sufficient enough pressure to press this button, and even if it was on target. When this button is pressed, it breaks the circuit that's running, the current that's running through the circuit, and it looks to see if a new circuit was formed using the LeMay, which is also connected to the scoring apparatus. If the circuit breaks and it's off target, it doesn't register a touch on the scoring box. So that's another difference between the electric and the non-electric weapons.
Thank you. It seems like if there were grip issues, the different types could accommodate. It's not an issue for anyone. There's a lot here that's great for it.
It kind of sounds like whatever works for the particular person.
That's, yeah.
Because mine, granted I don't fence, but like me versus, yeah, and
Very much so. In fact, these pistol grips were originally called orthopedic grips. And they were for, they didn't exist at one point, and then for, the story goes, soldiers coming back from war who didn't have all of their fingers and wanted to keep fencing couldn't use a regular French grip like this. So this was designed for them to have something where there were more angles and things for them to grab onto so they could still fence. And then people without any problems with their fingers found out that they can do some fencing actions with these that you can't do with these. And so this is pretty universal worldwide now in international competitions of pistol grips.
Is there actually a wire that gets hooked to those two posts there on the electronic? And does the wireless go to the control? You don't have to worry about a line on the floor.
There is wireless. In terms of the weapons, you can see right down the center of the tops of the blades. The non-electric weapon doesn't have a groove going down the middle, and the electric one does. And there's a wire that runs down the middle of the blade. Most competitions are not wireless, but in like Olympic competitions, rather than having the wire go from your weapon through your jacket and out the back and then on the floor to there's a wireless box that communicates wirelessly to the scoring box, and so it kind of takes out a big chunk of the circuit, but functions the same.
But there are some that do actually have a wire. You have to just be aware where that wire is at.
Well, the wire that connects you to the box is on a little reel that retracts if you get closer, so you don't have to worry about tripping over it.
Okay.
It's like spring-loaded.
Right.
So as you move away from it, it's coming with you, and as you are retreating, it's pulling as a high-tension spring in the reels that pull that back, no matter how fast you run backwards.
Yeah. So both participants have their own box, usually one over there, one over here. But, in a competition, you could go around and around a few times, or do you try to always maintain in your lane?
Fencing is a very linear activity. It's very back and forth this way. It's done on a 14-meter strip, it's called. That's about 1 meter to 1.5 meters wide. And so there isn't a lot of, you don't turn your back and you don't pass each other typically. It's a lot of this back and forth, kind of like this, and like playing with the distance between you and the other fencers. Kind of like boxing, but you're not rotating around.
Right, yeah.
When I watched Sayla, it looked almost like dancing with swords.
Yeah, once you're good enough at footwork, it becomes very much like that, where you know what distance you need and your feet just automatically do it. You're in balance and you're under control, and you switch directions very quickly, you can go very fast, and then you can go any speed you want depending on the situation. Any other questions? Okay, thank you. I will, maybe I'll have a couple last few comments.
When you shook hands after the competition, you used your opposite hand because that was not the gloved hand. So you generally don't shake hands with the glove on.
No, usually because it's really sweaty.
Yeah, yeah,
Because you're doing this a lot,
Right.
right? Your mask
Right.
like this, and then you don't need to
Yeah.
show that necessarily.
yeah.
So just wrapping up in conclusion, just a few last minute things. How to sign up. So you can sign up for classes just by going to the Fargo Park District website. There's they have it set up where you can do it completely online, and then there's also a phone number. You can just call and you can register for classes that way. When you sign up, you included there is my direct contact information, so that you can share details about yourself or your athlete with me before or during the class as well. When you sign up, my contact information is there on the site, or you can ask them for it as well. So a little bit about where we fence. So we have a dedicated fencing room, in a Fargo Park District building called the Southwest Youth Arena in South Fargo. So it's a large building that's used also for hockey, but we have a room that's dedicated just for our fencing activities.
And there are scholarships available from the Park District if it's a financial barrier that way as well.
They have programs like that, yeah.
Fantastic.
And this is, if I may, Coach, fencing is one of the rare activities that can follow you for life. It's not just for kids where maybe you play a sport during your elementary years and then there really isn't a ton offered, or even after high school. Fencing is the rare sport that really supports you officially, not just here in Fargo, for the rest of your life. There's a veterans category for when you're above 60 or 50, I think it is, and so it's something, I think if you love it, you really can continue to do it, and parents can fence with their children. It's something that we see not just here in Fargo-Moorhead, but also if we're traveling, we'll see competitive father and son. We see that, and it's really incredible. It's a sport like no other, and I'm so thankful for the information that you've given us tonight, Coach. It's been incredible. Sorry, please continue. I just wanted to, I think that's one of the coolest things about fencing.
It is, yeah, and I appreciate that, you know, while you're exercising and having fun, you're learning self-control, perhaps frustration tolerance if things aren't going your way. Lots of the different skills that are soft skills that we need to build for life would be great in a sport that is so individualized. I think that would really appeal to a lot of our families. So I'm appreciative that you came and spoke with us. Thanks.
I'm sorry, Shell. Coach, I think that I interrupted. You were talking about the space at the arena.
Oh,
and I think that might be an important part of.
I have a bunch of pictures that will be shared at some point of the space. So that show exactly, it's a large room, all of our equipment is in it. There's chairs for people to sit, both inside the room and right outside the room. There's a large window between the room and just the kind of like main lobby area upstairs. So if it gets to be too loud, you can easily step outside and watch from out there.
With those sensory things.
We have nice flexibility that way.
And if a fencer has support staff that attend with them, is that okay? Yeah, perfect.
Yep.
If they could fence too, no. We'll get everyone fencing.
Thank you for being so supportive.
Yes.
Do you have anything further to add?
No, that's all I had for my notes.
Do we have any questions for Coach Jason? Or I think instead of waiting to the end, we kind of asked them as you went along.
Absolutely, that's fine, that's perfect.
Nothing further? Okay, awesome.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
so much, Coach.
I thought when I was watching Selah, it almost looked like on a bowling alley, the space that you guys were fencing on. And it was fun to watch.
About that shape and size.
Yeah, very fun to watch. Thank you. And if I could, just for the people in the room, the reason Selah has her name on the back is not, most fencers do not have their names on the back. Selah, why is the name on the back here, Lynette?
for nationals and international competition.
Yeah, she's
National,
Excellent.
international, wow.
Yeah.
she's excellent. So thanks to Coach Jason for coming and sharing fencing with us. As we said kind of during his presentation, I think it's a great sport. If you don't like team sports, and there's the sensory aspect of it, and learning the soft skills while you're having fun. And it really does look like dancing with swords, which what kid doesn't like swords? So summer is coming up, and just a few tips and a couple of activities. And then we're going to open it up if anybody has questions for John or Matthew. We'll have them come to the front then when we're done on ways maybe that they got through the summer, things that made it easier for them. I know one of the things that is helpful, when you're in school, you've got a whole day full of structure, which is very helpful for people who really need that predictability of what's going to happen. So during the summer, I recommend, our family did it, that you make a summer schedule. So you get up at this time, then we eat our breakfast, and then maybe we have a certain amount of time outside, limit the video games to a certain time during this time. And just kind of build on that so they have a schedule. They know when they're gonna eat, what activities they're gonna do. Help them maybe during that time off pursue some of their favorite interests. We do have the College for Kids over at MSUM is something that has really been well attended by some of our kids, and they've loved the science and the electronics, and it's a really great program for kids to attend, especially a lot of our kids who have that, their brains are constantly running, and that challenges them, and they have a great time at the same time. There are reading programs that every library has, and we always set goals with our schedule that whoever read the most then would get a prize. It wasn't me. Lots of physical activity is really great because, you know, if you've got a kid with autism and also ADHD and they're cooped up, they're gonna go crazy and they're gonna make you crazy. So get them outside, get them running around. They don't have to do sports if that's not something they're interested in, but make up a fun game with a physical activity. You know, we have to get creative a lot of the time so that our kids don't realize that we're working them, but we're working them so they can have the best possible experience for the summer. One of the things that I would recommend, if you're gonna go on vacation, and a lot of families do during the summer, please tell your child ahead of time that you're going to go on vacation. You want to prepare them before you go. Because if you just think, oh, it'll be great, I'll surprise John, we're going to go to Disneyland. John, what would happen if I walked up to you and said, hey John, guess what? I got your bag packed, we're going to go to Disneyland, let's go.
I would not go.
No.
At that moment.
No. So a fun thing would probably wind up being stressful for your child, for you, because you're not taking into consideration that they need to be prepared. And if you do go on vacations, make sure that you go somewhere that your child would enjoy it. If you like fine china and you want to go to a museum where there's fine china, good for you. Don't take your kid unless your kid loves fine china, because all that's going to happen is they're going to get overstimulated, or they're going to have all that bouncy energy. Again, you're not going to have a good time because they're not having a good time. And it's better to just make that an enjoyable activity that you know they're going to like, and avoid having to deal with, how do I come down from a meltdown? Avoid starting the meltdown in the first place. And I don't think it's necessarily, some people are like, we're catering to your child. As parents, we do that all the time anyway. So
you
you
have
want
to figure out what works, basically.
Yeah, and every family's different. Every family is very, very different. We've got, like I said, the Ann Carlson Summer Camp. I'm trying to get my son to go for the first time to sleepaway camp this year. Elks Camp Grassick has a sleepaway camp, which is out in Dawson, North Dakota. Their information is online. One of the things that I like about the Elks is they get OT while they're there. They get speech therapy while they're there, they get reading therapy while they're there, but they also get to do the fun activities and the crafts and ride on the pontoons and do all the other fun things as they're prepared for them. And then they get to have what we would say was a normal experience, but they would have an enjoyable experience. That you know, I remember going to camp as a kid, and I had a great time. And I would love my kid to go to camp and have a great time, but it needs to be structured differently than my camp was. And Elks really does that. The Autism Society of Minnesota on their website has a list that I think is 4 pages long of the different camps that are available in Minnesota. Some are day camps, some are sleepaway camps, some allow siblings. Just take a look at and see if there's something that fits with what you need. Yes?
What exactly is sleepaway camp?
Sleepaway camp.
Please
Okay.
explain.
Sleepaway camp is where you would go somewhere. For example, my daughter went to Bible camp out in Alexandria. So we drove to this little camp where it had all these little cabins around a big cafeteria and a big chapel. There was a swimming area, there was a sports area, and we dropped her off, and she stayed there for a week with us gone. And she made friends and did all the activities and enough time to be there, so we wrote letters before she left so she'd get mail when she was there. For some kids, that's fun. Other kids, it would be a nightmare. And you know your kid. So, not fun for you, Matthew?
Actually, or let's see here, I had a different experience with that, because my version of that was diabetic camp, which, let's see here, 8 to, or it may have been earlier than that, but basically it was at least 6 years, if not more, just a week long, and for that particular setup, because it was boys and girls at the camp. The girls had the cabins, the boys had like World War II tents.
I'm so sorry.
Whatever, it worked. But I mean, at the time I wasn't DX, so whatever.
No, you weren't diagnosed, but you were still a person with autism.
Well, exactly, but so it was just figuring out what worked.
Yeah, which is kind of the way that we operate all the time, is we figure out what works. So a reminder to make sure you've got your daycare prepared and you've got your child prepared if you're a working parent, where they're going to need to be in daycare, and that's a different structure. Also, make sure that over the next few weeks you're preparing your child for the change. They're not going to be with that teacher anymore. Most likely, they're going to be in a different grade, in a different part of the building, or in a different building entirely. How are you going to prepare your child to be successful during that transition? Change is hard. It's especially hard for some people, and you're shaking your head over there, George, you know what I mean? And the more we prepare them, the better equipped they're going to be, and the better the experience is going to be for everyone. So that's the tips that I have for getting through summer. Lots of activities. We've got adapted taekwondo, which would be great. My kids have done that through the Fargo parks. They do it through Red River Traditional Taekwondo, and Master Jim Grimstead is the instructor. Wonderful program for a child who has any difference. You can be in that program, I think, up until 21. Yeah, great programs.
Well, back in the late 1950s and 1960s, I was in school, and I was actually, I can see I was on the spectrum. And nobody knew what, and they'd say, you should, this is easy. And I'd think, I can't do it this way, and it wouldn't make any sense to me.
How did you adjust?
Well, I just had to keep, working my way through, and try to get as much help as I could, but just like we saw it before we knew John was on the spectrum. When he was in first grade, I think with the reading, And the teacher just came and said, I've taught so many kids to read, but John can't read the way that I'm teaching. Well, you know, it was because that was, and so that was where I could see that, okay, that's like me. And I could understand it from that standpoint.
So from a parent's perspective, we'll get to John here in a minute. What do you think there was something that you two did that helped make the best summer experience for your whole family, including John? What are some tips that you can give us?
Well, we took, back when John was younger, his grandparents were living up in Bagley, Minnesota, and so we would go up there, and Becky would take him up there, and I would come up later at the end of the week or whatnot, and so, that was one thing, and we, from there, we would go down to Itasca Park or do something, different like that, but,
He had day camps to go to also. I
Yeah.
don't think they always went over very well. But it was an experiment. I'd hear about a camp or a place for the summer, and I would think, well, he can't just sit in the living room every day of the summer and do nothing. So I'd try and find some organization or some activity that would be going on. Some you went to for a few hours a day. I don't think you had any sleepovers.
No, not with those camps.
Did you have to prepare him in any way, knowing then that he was like you, George? Did you have to prepare him? Or was John, you put him in there and he just kind of?
He was really kind of quiet about the whole thing.
Okay.
I could never always tell how it was going, being he didn't tell me anything. I assumed everything was fine, but I'd find out later on all the difficulties he'd had that summer. So it basically, yeah, we could go visiting other people, or even he spent 1 or 2 summers, he did a lot of swimming up at our pool at the school. We tried a few sports that didn't go over too good. We tried fencing
yeah, he
and
tried
baseball.
fencing.
Oh, wow.
And, but there were other things going on at the same time that I didn't realize that was affecting him. And it just so happened that these sports happened to happen at the same time. And so if we had remedied other situations, I think more of these activities would have worked out better.
I can see that. When other things are going on and they have a hard time adjusting because they're thinking about other things or they're affected by other things. It's hard to let those things go sometimes. John, from your perspective?
The same stuff, basically?
Well, you can tell me whatever, let's go back to my original question.
Okay.
What do you think, let me see if I can remember my original question. What do you think was one of the things that helped make your summer the most successful?
Knowing ahead of time what the plan was and what we were going to do, and trying to limit or time it so that it would be able to limit other stressors that were happening and going on in my life.
Okay.
So if there was something that was really causing a lot of stress, we would take care of that first and then focus on the summer experience, and that would make it a lot more accessible.
Okay.
Yes, you have a question?
May I ask, please, when you say, please let me know ahead of time, how far ahead did you like to know about activities or trips?
At least 2 weeks for like a trip or something.
Okay.
And you were able to transition then into the trip if you had that kind of?
Yeah.
Okay. Otherwise resistance.
Otherwise, resistance, yeah. I would kind of freeze up and, deer in headlights type thing.
So what I'm hearing you saying is that you triaged your needs and you took care of the important things that were kind of in your way, so you could focus on the other things that were more fun in the summer,
Correct.
right? Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And we also did a few years with summer school. They all thought that, being he wasn't caught up with the top student in the class, that he needed summer school. Well, some years it helped and some years it didn't. I think he just went just to spend the time there to get the day done with, so you could have the rest of the summer, because at summer schools, we're like 6 weeks.
Mhm.
But they, of course, everybody thought, well, he needs help, so send him to summer school. And okay.
That was especially in elementary school, in which a lot of teachers and staff did not really know how to work with people on the spectrum and the teaching materials. By the time I got to junior high and there was actual knowledge in place, an IEP put in place to make learning more customized to being able to really reach me and allow me to understand better. My grades went a lot better. I was ahead of the class, and I graduated high school with honors. So
Good for you, John.
it depends on the on the teaching style and how you're teaching and how you're reaching a student. So
And how that student is set up
Yeah.
for success, yeah?
yeah.
Awesome.
So, like with elementary school, they thought I needed summer school because I wasn't caught up as they thought, but it was the method of teaching.
Yeah. So Matthew, same question for you. What was the one thing that you can think of, or what was something that helped you have the most successful summer?
Well, it's a couple different things, because depending on where I was in that particular, or what grade basically, and because younger grades it was like summer camps and that kind of jazz, which for the summer camps, most of them I had already been at least once, so I had a general lay of the land. And of course, with summer camps, those things are structured, of course.
Mm-hmm.
So, but after that, it was, because that was before high school, basically. But after that, because I had started doing theater in the summers, Trollwood, and that is structured also. So there's a time you need to be there, there's a general kind of game plan as to what's going on, and, well, so, like, I had done the classes and the show, and depending on if I was doing classes and show or just show, because or if you were just doing show, like, because I was always doing lighting tech, and for that stuff it was set up, take down, set up, take down, and I was always running spot for that. So, but of course, it depending on the show, it depends on what needs to be done, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But like, it is the direction beforehand that helped me. So.
Predictability, structure.
Exactly.
Yep.
Can I ask, how did you deal with changes, if there were ever a change in the day's schedule? How could you, or I guess, let me rephrase that. How could you set parents up for success if the day needs to change at the
Needs to
last
change?
minute?
Okay. I'm guessing you're asking for like younger-ish kids.
Or just for anyone in general, for a
Okay.
summer activity where things are less structured
Well,
already, how did you deal, yeah, how could you?
Exactly, like, cause I'm guessing you're asking like, yeah, the kid's sitting at home just thinking around and parent says, well, we're going somewhere, get ready. That'll throw an autistic kid, so, like, well, let me see,
Or I guess really, if parents were going to make a
Well-
plan with an organization,
Well-
what should they tell them to help the child be successful if there needs to be a change?
for me, myself, and I would or take a double pronged attack or whatever.
Okay.
Cause it's two parts, it's whatever organization and the kid or adult or whatever.
Mhm.
So if it's some activity that, I mean, you're gonna be doing one thing and it totally changes the last minute. Well, that's on the kid then to try and deal with that. Cause I mean, yeah, they may have been super excited and whatever, just bouncing out of their chair about it.
And then there's a thunderstorm.
Right.
Like that.
Mhm.
Yeah, if it's like, yeah, the weather plays a huge part, well, of course, this is summer. But, yeah, that's, or for the autistic kid or autistic adult, depending, like, you might need to have the plan B, plan C, plan D, plan X,
Okay.
et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And depending on how far you need to go down the line.
Oh, wow. So, let me make sure I understand you correctly. If you articulate in advance, we're going to do this, and if this for some reason doesn't work, here's another option, that will be very, that will help the kiddo no
Well,
matter what, or anyone really.
Depending on the kid, but, cause if you kinda give the, well, if this doesn't happen, this might happen, or this might happen, or this might happen, they'll be prepared for that.
Perfect.
I mean, cause say, I mean, heck, if we get like a full, like 3-day thunderstorm, I mean, the city's flooded, so, so whatever outdoor activity is being scheduled for that particular day is totally wiped out. So it's inside. Well, what can we do inside that will restructure or be productive or whatever? And I mean, for what I was doing, because like it didn't particularly matter that, like, say we had rain days. Well, half of the stuff was done inside anyway, like getting the lights prepped. You don't do that out in the middle of nowhere. So, but the actual setup of the light, that happens on site. So it had to be halfway decent. So.
Sure. Do you have a comment also on that, John? What advice would you give parents or even an organization that could help kids be successful with a last minute change?
I do absolutely agree that you have a plan A, a plan B, a plan C. That I would say would be extremely helpful.
One thing I think you had mentioned at another event was building in time to handle transitions or allow for adjustments. So just adding extra time to the schedule, if I heard you
Yes,
correctly?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Within a structured time frame to, for the activity or the summer camp, whatever, if there is a change, just give a little bit of time period there to allow my mind to catch up with the new plan, so I'm able to mentally prepare myself for the difference, because there's like a little bit of a delay in how I'm thinking of that, and so I just have to wait for that to catch up, and so just a few mental tricks.
Well, because as I just stated, I mean, how many X number of backup plans you have it kind of, and I don't know if it would help a kid or myself or whatever, but have it literally spelled out. Have it, this is what we're gonna do, this ... But I mean, depending on who, what, where, and how.
We did a lot of social stories when Bobby was little.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to the zoo today. If it rains, then we will go to the playland in the mall.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that, I think the if and then go very helpful for him, so that he knew there was a contingency plan, so I think that's fantastic.
Well, and for me at least, doing it that way, yeah, if plan A or B or C doesn't work, you always have plan D, and you kind of have somewhat of an idea of what that is and how it may or may not go.
Right.
But kind of you have the generalization of what it could happen out as, and I think I'm speaking a little more as an adult here, but I mean, like,
People with autism are all across the ages, go ahead.
And I totally realize that, and that's why I'm also trying to basically back it up.
Mm-hmm.
So.
That's incredible insight, I appreciate it.
Oh, it's one of those, yeah, I've had years to work on this, so.
Yeah, so it's obvious you probably,
Yeah.
yeah. But that's fantastic that you feel so comfortable with it and how you move forward, and is just life.
Are transitions and summers easier for you now as adults? I'm curious about that. You know, all the struggles that we have when they're littles.
Well, it's better than what it used to be when I was a child, but it's still difficult to transition. But you know, I have ways of dealing with that, knowing now more about myself, with allowing time to adjust, with building backup plans upon backup plans, so it is easier. I think another way of explaining something that he said was with like Plan D he was talking about, where it's not, you have a general idea. Another way to explain that I thought of was, you know, you have like the three-dimensional video game characters where it's built up by millions and millions of polygons and colors. Plan D is the wireframe.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the beginning of an idea. You have a general sense of what it is, but you're not going to be able to fully develop it until you get to that point, until plan A, B, and C fails. But you have the idea of the beginning of it, so then you're able to actually work off of something instead of nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the same thing. There's a wireframe for E, F, G, H, I, J, K.
Mind if I say something here? It's basically flying by the seat of your pants on that one.
Yeah.
But, like, after a certain how many X number of, like, yeah, you're at plan D, but so at that point you're kind of flying by the seat of your pants anyway. So, yeah.
Well, and building on that, is it good to have just if chaos breaks out, we know we're going to tuck in and watch movies or something like that. I know with my nephew, it would be, what if that doesn't happen? And what if that doesn't happen? You know, is it comforting to just say, well, then we're all gonna snuggle and watch a movie?
Yes, yes it is.
That way, no matter what, there's a plan in place.
For me, it's either one of two things. If all else fails, it's either watch something on TV, watch videos, or game. Because whatever system I'm on, I can always boot it, or depending on if the power's out or not.
Yeah.
And usually it's pretty good, but you know.
Mhm.
And keep all your juice boxes charged for when the power goes out.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah, because you never know when you're gonna need that video game for your kiddo. So
Oh, sure.
those little portable juice box batteries are
Oh.
awesome.
Yeah.
Well,
Great idea.
either that, or if you're into like the retro gaming, like I'm assuming like more or some of the adults in the room at least would remember the original Game Boy.
Mm-hmm.
Still have one.
Well, I like
Good for you, John. That's worth money now.
This John as well.
Oh, nice.
Did-
So when
so-
there are problems, you can always revert back to video
well,
games.
if all else fails, go for batteries.
Yeah.
You gotta make sure you've got a charged battery
Oh,
to
exactly.
get you started.
Yeah. Does anybody have any additional questions for our experts? All three of them, because we're gonna count George too. Well, I was going to ask, each of the three of you, do you have a final piece of advice for parents for the summer?
Well, when I was a kid at summertime, my grandparents had a farm and I would go out there, and my job was to drive truck during combining. That was the big reason that I, went out there. And so I was very, it was very structured.
Mm-hmm.
And, I would have to, know where, we're gonna be going to. I was doing this when I could barely reach the clutch on the truck, and so.
Different times.
And so I could all I could do is move it just from one windrow to another,
Mhm.
at that time. But, it was this thing that that was my job, and, I could really excel at that. That was, good. But, then I also became a cat fancier because we had a lot of cats in that farm.
Stay structured and get a favorite hobby. Is that what I'm hearing from you, George?
Well,
And I would kind of have to reflect on that, because I mean, if you've got whatever hobby you're into, if you can say you're into gaming, but you want to finish the game and start the next, do that. But say you're into whatever anime you're into, complete that, move on to the next. But kind of have a goal, meet, move on. It is basically what I'm getting at.
I think it's also important what you said, if you're into video games, make this as your goal. One of the things as parents we could do is, if your kid likes video games, there are lots of coding camps around town, and coding games online. You can make a Minecraft mod, you can make your own Minecraft server. I don't know what they have. They've got to have something where you could make something for Fortnite.
Well, if all else fails, and depending on the kid, depending on X, Y, and Z, because there are the quote-unquote single board computers that are out, Raspberry Pi.
Yeah, Raspberry Pis.
So they could literally build one and start coding off that.
And how awesome would that make
Well,
your summer?
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
That and
John's got a goal for summer now.
and they're relatively inexpensive. That's the
$35.
well, depending on if you get or if you only get the board, it's like 20 or 25 to 35. But if you get a complete setup, I mean, it's like 150 or something, maybe.
So parents should check out Raspberry Pi and do some research if their kids into stuff like that?
Well, yeah, sure, and depending on if
Raspberry
they
Pi.
PI, yes, and depending on if they have extra text sitting around, because if, say, you've got an extra Bluetooth keyboard, you could connect that thing to it.
That'd be awesome.
Another thing, since we're talking about coding, Unity has released for free. Their proprietary game engine, which you can code your own games, and you don't have to pay a license fee as long as you don't make under like $2,000 a year from it.
Awesome.
But since it's just a hobby and you're not selling anything, you just get to get the license for free.
Well, if I may, another great resource is Khan Academy.
Yeah,
They have
Khan Academy has got a lot of great stuff on
a
it.
bunch of coding courses that.
They're on YouTube
where
and they
grade-
have their own
Oh, well,
website.
they do have their own website and they actually have evaluators and it's great to get the feedback. And you can watch the videos over and over again until you get it right. It's really, I mean, there's so much there.
There is, you can, I know we've done where we bought a couple of different programs, because you can watch the sales on Amazon. And we bought for Bobby how to make your own Minecraft mod and how to make your own Minecraft server. But I didn't score them because I know nothing about them. He actually sent the stuff and the access to someone who works for Minecraft.
Oh, nice.
Wow.
And they graded it and gave him feedback on what he did well, what he needed to improve, and that to him really made his day because he's like, these guys, they do this for a living and they think I only got 2 points off, that's awesome. So other people pouring into our kids is important too.
And
Well-
the way how, and that was constructive criticism is also helpful because that is structure. Constructive is structure, and it gives you the parameters of what you did right, what you can work on, and it gives you another goal.
Well,
It does, that's very true.
if say you're building something and like you bring it to whoever is the premier of that, I mean, and have them or get the feedback from that person. I mean, that's basically what that is.
And that's a huge deal to some.
Except, and, like me, myself, and I, but
Yep.
because for say like my jewelry stuff, I mean, like I go one-offs for a reason. Like it is personalized to the person.
It's good to get that feedback. Yeah. Anything final before we wrap it up? No?
No, I think we're good.
Thank you so much for watching our video. Remember, there are lots of great things to do this summer. The takeaway that I really got from a lot of what you three were saying was structure. Give everybody time to transition and prepare in advance. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you guys.